Hey, welcome to this Thirsty Thursday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. We're coming to you today live as we do every day, noon to 2 Eastern, from the Question Tequila Studios. We're downtown on Broadway at the Newsmax Studios. And boy, do we have an unbelievable show for you today. Before getting into all that, all the great guests we have today, downtown at the New York Stock Exchange, keep you up to date on what's happening in the markets. The Dow is down about 27 this morning, mostly because of a fall in one stock, which is 3M. They missed their earnings just a little bit, or the market didn't like how their earnings were reported. That dragged the whole Dow down almost 100 points off its lows. Still up 27. I think this week will be good. We want to hear more from China. And on the Bitcoin front, as I mentioned, I fattened up my position at 7,900 last week. Boy, was I wrong. Bitcoin's at 7,500. It's been under siege a little bit lately. 7,500. Any stabilization for a week or two is good news. Through here, you could be looking at 4,000 or 5,000. So stay nimble, stay alert, and stay on top of things. And when Frank's gone, I stay on top of things by bringing in the best guests, like Bill Cortese, back with me again for the second time this week. Billy, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Bill, there's so much going on out there. Impeachment, this, that. I have my friends from the New American Populist on. They have this mission where they want to go after the 31 seats in Congress that were flipped, where Trump won the district and then we lost it in the midterms. Focused on impeachment, focused on the Congress. There's a lot going on with the Senate, and we need to keep our eye on the ball there too, because number one, we have a slim majority, we need to protect it, but there are vulnerabilities out there on their side where we could fatten up that margin. What's happening?
Sure, and I think this has been one of the arguments, at least for a lot of people that have been able to kind of plug their nose and support President Trump, is that you have a Senate that's been approving, I think, over 150 Republican judges at this point now. So President Trump has truly changed the judiciary and how what it looks like, and I think Leader McConnell needs a lot of credit for that too. But you have a majority, about 53 seats in the Senate, and you have a lot of competitive Senate seats coming up. A few that can potentially come to the Republican corner, but some that could get away from us as well. The demographics in some of these states are changing. First and foremost, Maine. Susan Collins is in for a real fight, probably the toughest of her career at this point. Maine is an odd state. They do love their politicians up there. They do love their people.
Maine's weird, but right? Maine's got that like little extra sneaky district in there or something where there's like a little Republican enclave. I think Trump won it, right? They're like one.
Right, and if you go to the western part of Maine, it's much more rural, much more Trump-like out there. But you've had a lot of Bostonians kind of move up to Maine, bringing their voting patterns, voting for Democrats as well. So that's certainly changed Maine. So Susan Collins is I think a top pickup for where Democrats think they can go on offense.
What about out there in Golden, Colorado, Molson Coors Brewery? What's happening out in Colorado?
Cory Gardner, I think, is probably, from the Democrats' point, the weakest incumbent Republican out there right now. John Hickenlooper, who initially ran for president, has jumped into the Senate race and is really running a very weak campaign thus far. It's very awkward. He's not in line with the far left, which has really taken over the Democratic Party at this point. So I do think at the end of the day, he's going to be the nominee. He's going to be a strong nominee. So you're going to see a lot of money from both sides pour in to this Colorado Senate race.
Hickenlooper didn't assail himself greatly in the whole presidential thing, but he was governor, and he does have statewide appeal. So we got to keep our eye on that one for sure, because he could win that seat back if people take their eye off the ball. And then John McCain's old state, they got Kristen Sinema in there, and then we had a special. What's happening in Arizona?
Well, you have Martha McSally, who was appointed by by Governor Doug Ducey out in Arizona to finish out John McCain's term. So she's up running against astronaut Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly is married to Gabby Giffords, who is the congresswoman who was almost assassinated, was shot, represented the southern part of the state. Mark Kelly and his twin brother.
He was an astronaut.
Was an astronaut.
And, these are veteran, military folks, served the country. tough
It's going to be a
candidate
tough
too.
race. Listen, 50,000 Californians moved to Arizona last year. They're changing the demographics of this state. They're bringing their voting patterns with them. And so
Yeah.
Arizona is not this hard, this bright red state anymore. It's becoming more and more purple. And I think Martha McSally's got the best campaign team out there. She's a really hard worker. This is a woman who took on the DOD and said she wasn't going to wear the hijab when she was stationed in Saudi Arabia. She's a tough woman.
Wow.
She's a really, really hard worker. Flew the A-10 Warthogs. She was a fighter pilot.
Speaking of people fleeing California, Tom Delbacaro is going to be joining us next. He's the author of The Divided Era, which is a wonderful book talking about how the more the government decides for us, the more the government divides us. We'll ask him about that California exodus also.
Terrific.
What about North Carolina? The Tar Heels are down there. What's happening down there and down on Tobacco Road?
Yeah, Tom Tillis is the incumbent. Again, that's a state that voted for a lot of Democrats this past cycle, put a Democrat in the governor's mansion down there. Another state that you have a lot of Northeasterners moving down to North Carolina, really changing the voting demographics down there and making North Carolina very competitive. Remember, this was a state that Barack Obama won in 2008. And Tillis is in for a fight coming up this next year. He has a lot of competition. Again, this is a place where you're going to see a lot of money from both sides pour in. He's a former Speaker of the House down there. He knows the state well. He's got a top-notch team. I think Leader McConnell's a big fan of his. They're going to do what they can to hold on to the seat.
We had one of the candidates on the congressional side in those 31 vulnerable congressional seats. I think it's Georgia, the 6th congressional district over there. So that might be, a double banger. Like, you think like the national Republicans are looking at, like, when you see Georgia and Georgia for a Senate and a Congress, that's where they got to point some money in there, probably.
Well, when you
right?
see where you've lost a handful of seats, or you can, North Carolina, Georgia, those are states that have competitive Senate races and competitive House races too. So you're going to see from the top, from the Trump campaign down, really an effort to increase Republican turnout, to really bring some of those independents over the Republican side. And so that's something that's going to have an effect from the top of the ballot all the way down.
What about the Michigan Wolverine state? I guess at some point Mitt Romney's dad was the governor of Michigan.
Way back in the 60s, I believe.
Way back in the 60s when Romneys could win things, I guess.
It's been a while.
Exactly. What's happening in Michigan?
It's going to be competitive. This was a state that was part of the Trump firewall, the Midwestern firewall that Trump was able to win back in 16. You have a terrific candidate out there who ran for, I believe, a House seat last time. A former fighter pilot, flew the Apaches, I believe, in the Army. This is a state that, again, is kind of all over the map. Voted for Republicans in 16. Republicans lost a bunch of House seats in 18, but kept the House, the state Senate, and the state Assembly out there. So this is a place that I think you can really see another competition in terms of the president putting a lot of money, a lot of effort into Michigan, and it kind of working its way down the ballot.
Speaking of Senate, a little later on in the show, we're going to be talking about a really serious issue, which is the attack on Christianity across the globe. And we're going to have former Senate Majority Leader from Mississippi, Trent Lott, is going to be joining us today on the show. And maybe I got to ask him how maybe we can help, even at Liquid Lunch in some of these districts. We got to keep these Senate seats, and we got to fight a couple off, and we can pick a couple off, too.
We can.
You know what I mean?
We can,
Even
absolutely.
Even if Hickenlooper, that's a strong candidate against an incumbent. Let's say, we have to lose one. If we pick up two somewhere else, we're still like +1.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. We can net gain this cycle. There's no doubt.
That's what I really believe we can net gain, especially with Trump at the top of the ballot. And Billy, we talked about it a little the other day, but Chris Ruddy, the CEO of Newsmax, wrote a piece where he cited Alan Lichtman, this famous professor who's picked the winner of every presidential since 1984. And Lichtman said, Trump's going to win again in 2020, and the only hope the Democrats have is to impeach. So I think if they don't manage that, and Trump's on the top of the ballot, we could steal a few on that.
I think we can. Remember, this is depending on the timeline with impeachment. If the House votes to impeach, the Senate is going to hold the trial. And so we saw in 1998 what happened when Republicans were overeager and impeached Bill Clinton. It bounced back, and Democrats picked up seats in 1998.
Without a doubt, it's just ridiculous. We had John Eisenbach on yesterday. He's a Columbia professor. Okay, he's a presidential historian, and the answer to my question was, hey, has the president ever in history been removed from office through impeachment? No. We have the majority, plus they need a supermajority. This is all kabuki theater. We know what the outcome is, right? Unless like 17 senators go bad, this is all a waste of time. It's a hide in plain sight mentality. We want to just keep soiling this guy. Imagine.
And they ran, John, they ran on this. They talked about this. They said, we didn't want to do this from day one, but things presented themselves. The truth is, they're on record. They talked about impeaching the president from day one, about beating him from day one. And so I think when they kind of read the tea leaves here, I think it becomes more and more challenging when you look at their supposed front runner like Joe Biden, who's hemorrhaging money, who can't put together.
He's hemorrhaging his eyeballs. He was on CNN a couple weeks ago. His eyes were popping full of blood.
And that too.
And in the debate, his teeth almost came flying out. Him and Nancy Pelosi need to get a grip, some denture grip.
Right.
Because there's some crazy things happening. If you're the front runner, you would think you would be shined up and shaped up, possibly remember what state you're in. You know, he's in Vermont. He says, I love New Hampshire. You know, the guy's all over the place.
It's true.
He's the front runner, and he got outraised by like everyone. You brought those great numbers to us the other day on the fundraise.
I mean, Bernie's got 3 times the amount of money he has cash on hand right now.
And Bernie's now got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez behind him, which is, just shows where he is and she is. So the more they decide, the more they divide. And that's really at the root of socialism. They want to homogenize us all. We want us all to be this middle class of great people. Billy knows. He's a decorated Marine veteran, okay? He's one of the top Republican strategists in the whole country. Lives right here in New Jersey. Always makes himself available to us. But you know what? We bring on real people who know where the rubber meets the road. We call our audience the purple people because nobody's all red or all blue. If you are, you're the wacko, okay? The middle is the purple. Those are the people who can have thoughtful conversations. That's what I always do with this guy. He's great at it, and all voices are heard on Liquid Lunch at all times. And if you want to know more about what happens when the government keeps deciding and how that keeps making us divide, you're going to hear all about that with Tom Del Beccaro coming up right after this. He's the former chairman of the California Republican Party. Bill Cortese, thank you for filling in Frankie in the leadoff spot. And a whopper of a Thursday show with a special second hour. We're going to talk to Pam Bondi. We're going to talk about former Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott from Mississippi about Christian persecution across the globe and some American citizens who are currently kidnapped and not allowed to leave Kuwait. We're going to tell you why we need to free Marsha throughout the second hour. You're watching Liquid Lunch where the purple people hang out. More after this.